And Josh, I'm so sorry, were you going to run the meeting?
I am trying to find the agenda right now. But you are more than welcome to if this is working for you. I just know that you were having some issues.
I was, yes. Just for full awareness for everybody, I was going to host the meeting, but I'm in the process of moving, and they turned off my internet at 5 o'clock today, and they're turning it back on tomorrow at 9 a.m. So it's a little glitchy. So I asked Josh to step in while I'm having some issues. So yeah, Josh, you take your time. If you don't mind running the meeting, that'd probably be easier.
Yeah, and I'm realizing I do not know where the actual doc went for the meeting agenda, but I do remember that there are 2 items on there that it sounded like you had some quite familiarity with. So
there's actually just one item that was going to be on, and then we were going to use the announcements to just kind of talk through. Alex is going to introduce a topic that she was interested in talking next week or next month about, and I had one that I wanted to talk about for next month too.
All right, we can just go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we don't need to necessarily share the exact doc. Yeah. Internet issues happen. Yes, so I now call the meeting to order. It is 7:04 p.m. This is the Zoning and Economic Development Committee for ANC 1E. Thank you everyone for who's in attendance. I see there are quite a few people in the audience. I'm looking forward to the discussion. I'll just go ahead and call the roll. Commissioner Footer.
Present.
Commissioner Footer is present. Alex Baca.
Present.
Alex Baca is present. Pat Nelson.
Present.
Pat Nelson is present. Josh Jacobs, Commissioner Jacobson, that's me. I am present. I do not see any other folks in the audience, but I'll just call out the other 2 committee members that I am aware of. Tony Norman, if you're in the audience, please speak up or raise your hand. And then there was one other person, I think it's Brad Grant, or sorry, no, yeah, that's right. And then Dimitri, who I don't see in the audience either. Okay.
And Josh, I see another iPad just joined, and I know that Patrick Nelson is mentioning that is typically, yes. So maybe that's.
I'm just going to allow them to talk and make sure it's Tony. Tony, if you're on the iPad, could you unmute and just say hi? Maybe it's not Tony.
Tony.
Oh, hey, Tony. Okay, great. I will go ahead and promote you.
All right.
Just want to make sure it's you, because I've seen issues with other ANCs having folks join the panel and that are not supposed to be there, and bad things happen. So, all right. With that, we have, I think it's 5 of the 8 members, so we have a quorum for the meeting tonight. A few administrative notes. This meeting is being recorded and it's being streamed to YouTube, so you can watch this on YouTube later and share that YouTube link with other folks if they need it. If you are dialing in and you have anything that you want to raise to the committee, you can press star, and Brian, do you remember this? Because star nine to raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and unmute you. Otherwise, you can raise your hand. The first item on the agenda will be I am trying to remember the consent agenda. It's hard when you don't have this thing right in front of you. The consent agenda is for the meeting minutes for last month. There weren't any actions last month. We just had a discussion. So I'll just make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the meeting minutes from last month. If there's no dissent, that motion carries. All right, that motion carries. And then the rest of the agenda, Commissioner Footer was graciously to verbally say that. But just to review, we have a presentation from Howard, and then committee member Alex Baca will have a discussion on, wow, I am blanking today. It was a long day.
I will talk briefly about the upcoming comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Comprehensive plan. Thank you.
And no presentation, nothing particularly detailed, just a heads up.
Perfect. Are there any other agenda items to add?
And I'll introduce just the topic that we want to have a discussion in March around the Neighborhood Management Authority Act of 2025.
Perfect. All right. And the other item is we will be just, as always with these committee meetings and ANC meetings, there's time for community announcements. So we'll jump into the community announcements right after this. I'll make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt that agenda. Any concerns with that agenda, feel free to speak up. Otherwise, that motion will carry. Great, that motion carries. And sorry, a lot of changes in the past couple of hours, so didn't have as much of a chance to prepare. All right, the next item on the agenda are the community announcements. Community members will have 3 minutes to make any announcements. Community members the same. If you have an announcement, you can raise your hand if you're on Zoom, and if you're dialed in, you can do *9 to raise your hand. Are there any community announcements? And for any other items that are already on the agenda, just wait until those items are discussed and you'll have time to chat there. All right, I am not seeing any hands raised. Anyone on the committee that had an announcement? Great, we will jump right into the presentation from Howard. I assume it's the usual folks that want to present, so I will go ahead and promote Derek and Leela. And please raise your hand if you also want to be promoted and you're part of that group. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of folks. I do recognize some of these names. Okay, great. We're just going to go ahead and promote everyone.
Got the whole team tonight. Love it.
And I apologize. I just realized I mispronounced Layla's name.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Footer, we brought the whole team for you.
Yes, love
okay,
it.
that's where all the attendees are. Okay.
Yes. So, good afternoon. I'm going to say special good evening, actually, to Patrick and Tony. How are you guys? So for the record, good evening to all of the commissioners. For the committee members, for the record, my name is Lila Batiste. I'm a partner at Holland & Knight, and I'm joined by my colleague, Chris Cohen. And we are here representing Howard and its development partner on the application it has pending for the redevelopment of the Wonder Plaza site located at 2301 Georgia Avenue. That application was filed on November 27th by an affiliate entity of Greystar on behalf of Howard, and the public hearing is scheduled for May 5th. So I think most of you are familiar. This is an application for further processing under the campus plan, which means that the building and programming for the building have been generally approved by the campus master plan, which was approved by the zoning commission. And as each building that has been approved comes down for development approvals or permitting, this is part of the process that it goes through. It's almost like a design review to make sure that what is being set before the commission is consistent with the approved campus plan. So I'll just introduce the persons leading the project for Greystar on the call. I see Chloe. I don't see Kusky. I don't see Liotti, but he was at the meeting that we presented to the ANC, I guess, 2 weeks ago. WDG is the architect for the project. Bob Keene will present. Grove Slade, Erwin Andres is here. He's the traffic engineer for the project and is available to answer any questions. And then, of course, Derek. So I'm going to turn it over to Derek in just one moment. I will just note that the project that is the subject of the application is a mixed-use building that consists of approximately 10,000 square feet of retail, 80,000 square feet of health and wellness center, and 6,400 square foot dining center and 592 student beds. So these are all university uses within the boundaries of the campus plan. And with that, I will turn it over to Derek. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I acknowledge Teresa Edmondson, also here from Howard? She had her camera off, so I overlooked her. Sorry about that, Teresa.
I assume everyone can see the image on the screen. Is that
Yes, we
correct?
can see.
Okay, good.
So good afternoon, everyone. Derek Neese-Williams here, the Assistant Vice President for Planning and Architecture here at my beloved alma mater, Howard University. Glad to be joining you guys together with our development team on this project. So as our counselor mentioned, this is a further processing of a project that was already contemplated within our central campus master plan. So you have a rendering of the project there, and the A&E team will actually run through the architectural details. But if you'll jump to slide number 2, and kind of just refresh everyone's memory on the project location, which is highlighted in the image on the right-hand side with the red dashed line. It is Project J for Juliet, which in the master plan is known as the Fusion Building. Programmatically, that building is in the master plan to consist of housing, inline retail, and a recreation and wellness center for the university campus. Which is exactly what our project team is prepared to illustrate to you guys today in terms of the uses, as well as the configuration and orientation of the design. So you might notice that the notional massing here for the building is kind of an E-shaped plan that fronts most of the mass along the Georgia Avenue corridor, at least as it was contemplated in the 2020 master plan for the campus. You might notice as we go through the presentation that the orientation has changed, and we think for the better. We always try to improve on the actual massings of the projects as we bring them from master plan level into the design reality that we're in. So this is one of a number of projects that are approved in our master plan, but it is naturally on the Georgia Avenue corridor. And so it is right at the campus edge and really needs to be a flagship for the university's campus. So again, just wanted to highlight the context behind this and the fact that currently the campus recreation activities are all commingled with our athletics facilities on the north of our campus. So the Recreation and Wellness Center really seeks to decompress the north side of campus for the 98% of students that are not intercollegiate athletes, and allow intercollegiate athletes on the north side of the campus free reign and more dedicated facilities that should enhance their coaching contact hours and ultimately lead to more wins. So that's just an overview. The project is called out for roughly 300 parking spaces as per the parking plan for the master plan, which is something that I think we're approaching overall in by the numbers. So again, I think that the overall project concept here is something that will ring true to what was called out for in the master plan. And as the design team brings you through some of the existing conditions and illustrate some of the historic preservation work that we're doing as part of the project, you'll start to see why we believe that the design that we've come up with is a great improvement on the original concept massing that was shown in the master plan. And we think, with your support, we will really look forward to developing this along the corridor to preserve relevant parts of the historic facade that are there while infilling with new and vibrant uses that we'll bring to the corridor. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the A&E team to proceed.
Derek, can I ask you one quick question?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I just had a loss of thought here. Was the zoning request for the uptick of the change in from MU2 to PDR to MU2 or MU4, whatever it is, I can't remember off the top of my head. Was that finally finalized?
So the zoning commission did vote in favor of the modification, the map amendment.
Right.
So I think
Final action will be on March 13th.
Yeah, I was going to say it's mid-March is when we should get the final order out. But we have
So-
directional approval there. And again, you bring up an excellent point that at present, that site is currently zoned for production, distribution, and repair, which is an industrial zone. And the master plan actually calls that out and highlights that it is a site that would need to change the underlying zoning in order to accommodate the prescribed uses that we put forth in the master plan. So thank you all again for your help and support in pushing forward that application that facilitated this project and a number of others that will emerge over the coming years.
So then, let me ask you a question then. What transpired on the 13th?
So there was a mistake. I think the Office of Zoning made a mistake in advertising February 13th. Nothing happened. It's,
When I talked to Teresa about that, she
yeah.
was going to get back to you, and I just never heard anything.
Yeah,
So
no,
so
she
it is
did.
October 13th then.
No, March.
March.
So
March,
what happened, they told
March.
us, yeah, they originally told us February 13th. But they calculated, I don't know, the dates wrong or
Okay.
something. And so we have an email from Sharon Shellen at the Zoning Commission that it's March 13th. Will be the
Okay,
date.
I just wanted to verify that because I was a little confused when I was looking online.
Yeah, I know it has caused some confusion.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Bob? Oh, there you are.
Good evening,
Go ahead, Bob.
everybody. My name is Bob Kane. I'm a managing principal with WDG, principal in charge of the project. So as Derek kind of teed this up very nicely, he spoke about the fact that the master plan is this E-shaped building, or was this E-shaped building where the courtyards were actually facing eastward. And as you'll see momentarily, we've sort of turned it around, and the courtyards face both west and north. And we pull the mass off of George Avenue, and we really highlight a couple what we think are very special historic buildings that have been part of the neighborhood and part of the university for many years. So with that, you probably all recognize these buildings. This is along Georgia Avenue. We're going to maintain the northwest building and the southwest building. We're going to remove the center building, which has been deemed, somewhat chopped up and not contributing as much to the character of the neighborhood. As we get to the corner of Bryant and Georgia, you start to focus on what I call the arched building. It's a very tall one-story building. Used to have a bunch of bread trucks in it, as some of you know the history of the site. And as we go around further on Bryant, you start to get to the alley of Bryant Street next to the power plant. And so the massing has changed dramatically. So we've created what we call kind of a stepping Z shape that has a prominent corner at Bryant and Georgia, but then it actually sets back and sort of steps along the alley and really pulls the 8-story residential tower back from Georgia Avenue and really lets the two historic buildings shine, if you will. And then between the two historic buildings, we have a building facade that we call the infill building, and you'll see that momentarily. And obviously, the site has a wonderful industrial history, and we've tried to honor that history in the way we approach the architecture. And so this is a site plan looking straight down on top of the project. The university is on the right, 6th Street is to the east, Georgia Avenue, of course, is to the west. Berry Place comes in from the west and actually aligns very closely to what will be the health and wellness entrance on Georgia Avenue. Up in this northeast corner is a high point of the site, which is about 20 feet above the retail corner at Bryant. And so, as you can see, this is where our residential entrance is. So students will actually enter the north courtyard, walk across it, and enter the building. There's a little 3-story link right here that connects the 8-story tower to the historic northwest tower and the infill building. So in terms of daylight, this new south courtyard is going to get wonderful daylight with south and west sun coming directly in. And then the north courtyard will get some shade from a 3-story wing, but it's not, 3 stories isn't too bad in the scheme of things. So as we continue to walk around the building, there's a second residential entrance off of Georgia Avenue. There's going to be about an 8,000 square foot dining facility off of Georgia. And then there's about 12,000 square feet of retail that's going to be entered from Georgia Avenue and Bryant Street. Entering the parking garage will happen off of Bryant Street and off of this alley, as well loading. And as I go to the next slide, oops.
Well, actually, while you're lingering here, I think it's worth pointing out that the 2 courtyard spaces that are created, we thought was really a winning design element here that differed from the prior configuration where those courtyards were kind of cloistered and off of Georgia Avenue. So in this setup, you're able to have really a cloistered courtyard that serves as the residential entry that has a buffer from, the hustle and bustle of the Georgia Avenue corridor and probably result in, better pedestrian safety. But then in addition, roughly one level above the Georgia Avenue corridor, there will also be another courtyard that actually daylights and fronts onto it and overlooks that corridor. So that provides some opportunity for see and be seen, summer programming, et cetera, that, I think will breathe more life into the corridor than just a straight curtain wall of a building. So I just thought I'd point that out because we thought that was a great amenity that, will greatly enhance the corridor and provide some differentiated environments for folks.
Absolutely. So as we start to look at the floor plans, I'll move through these quickly. From the bottom up, there's 3 levels of parking. So this is the lowest level. And when we go the next level up, you start to see the health and wellness. So most of the 75,000 square foot health and wellness program is actually below grade. So you can see at this first level is the gymnasium. There's 2 basketball courts, and then it's surrounded by weight training and other sort of fitness spaces. And there's a very cool grand staircase that ascends through all these levels and brings you up to the lobby. And has a nice skylight above it. So you start to see the stair coming up. So we come up to the next level of parking. And again, you're looking down into the gym. There's a running track around the courts, and you start to see multi-purpose rooms, administrative offices, and some other fitness space. You go up to the next level, and we're now at the Georgia Avenue level. So as I mentioned, on axis with Berry Place is the entrance into the health and wellness. There's going to be a juice bar that's very visible to Georgia Avenue. There's going to be a pro shop that's very visible to Georgia Avenue. There's going to be like a gaming area that's going to be visible to Georgia. So the intention, you can see, is pretty clear that we're really trying to activate the Georgia Avenue frontage. So the programming at the health and wellness is going to do that. This is our second residential lobby for students that are not coming in from the high kind of campus level entrance above. They can enter off of Georgia Avenue. The dining facility I mentioned is right here, about 8,000 square feet. And then retail is about 12,000 square feet, where entrances will kind of wrap the corner of Bryant and Georgia Avenue. And then you can see you go into the alley and down a ramp into the garage, where trucks will come in and do loading and servicing to the building.
Also, one other comment is that the dining facility that's shown in that kind of light yellow color, that's not an exclusive, like student only kind of venue. It's intended to be open to the public, but it'll offer, different food options that are more price sensitive to our student population. So just want to highlight that it's not something that's a restricted access thing. It's something where the public can come in and purchase meals alongside students.
So as we get up to, now we're at the courtyard level. As Derek was describing, this is a tall 1-story. So you're about 20 feet above Georgia Avenue when you're on the south courtyard. And so as students come in and they cut across the north courtyard, they'll enter the building into a lobby. Here's that 3-story link I was describing before. So you've got the lobby and communal spaces kind of overlooking the lobby. You've got additional reception and lounge spaces overlooking the south courtyard and overlooking Georgia Avenue. And our infill building, if you will, is kind of goes from here to here. It features a very cool bay window, and that's part of this whole lobby experience. And so then all the other sort of pale brown spaces, those are the private residential apartments. As we just hop up to the roof, as you guys are well aware, DC's got some pretty intensive green roof requirements. So the top of the building's got all the required setbacks and green roofs. And you can start to see the very beginning development of the 2 courtyards, the north courtyard and the south courtyard, kind of in early design. As we look at a cross section of the building, so this is a section cut. If you see this diagram, it's kind of cut in the north-south direction. It cuts right through that 3-story link I was describing, and it's looking back at the 8-story residential tower. So you can see that there's 8 stories of residential beyond. You see the north courtyard on the left, the south courtyard on the right. You can see the tall basketball court volume is completely below grade. and you see the running track, you see the dining, you see the retail, and you see the 3 levels of parking. So it's a pretty intensive program in section, a lot of things happening below grade. And so as we start to walk around the building and see the project in 3 dimension, this is really meant to be like a gateway view to the Howard University. So once you get to the intersection of Bryant and George Avenue, you know, the Wonder Plaza that's been sort of reconstituted, you see the sort of beautiful, cleaned up, arched buildings where the arches are completely exposed. Like today, the actual rounded parts kind of covered up and boarded up. Not very elegant, in my opinion. When we're done with it, it's going to be beautiful. So these glass openings are going to be set into the wall about 3 feet so that when the doors open, they're not swinging into open space. So the building's going to have a lot of depth. And then you see the infill building, and then you see the other historic building off in the distance, and we'll see that in a minute. And so we developed this double height masonry grid system that has a slightly irregular pattern, which we think gives it a nice kind of dynamic quality. And then on the corner, we've developed what we thought is kind of an interesting acknowledgement that this is a gateway intersection for the university. So we created this more transparent, glassy element on the corner of Bryant and Georgia. As we kind of swing around and we're hovering above, you know, the McDonald's on George Avenue, you see the 2 historic buildings. In between is the infill building, and then you see the residential tower kind of stepping behind. Obviously, the courtyards are not developed in these views. So, you know, more to come on those, of course. But I think you get a sense for the overall composition. And you get a sense, if you could imagine, the master plan had this as just a giant wall. And what we've done, I think, is a much more delicate, much more sophisticated approach, which is maintaining the historic character of the site and of the neighborhood and of the university, and in sort of pushing the mass back off of Georgia Avenue, which we think will make a much more pedestrian-friendly environment. And this is the last image that we're going to share. And again, it just sort of gets up to that northwest corner where Berry Place and Georgia meet. And you see the entrance to the health and wellness. You can imagine the juice bar and the fitness area kind of activated, and all the activation along Georgia Avenue between the retail and the lobbies. And then students will be traversing through this parking lot, through the passageway towards 6th Street, or they will cut into the north courtyard and walk across the courtyard and enter the building. So we're obviously excited about the project. The development's come a long way. It's been a pleasure working with Derek and Howard University, and of course Greystar Development as a great team. And we'd love to hear your comments. I guess I'll turn it back to Lila.
Thank you, Bob. So Commissioner Footer, that concludes our presentation to this committee. We're of course now available for any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to this project getting kicked off. I'll open it first to members of the committee. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll call on you, since I know there are a few of us on here and just want to make sure it's done with order. Pat, go ahead.
So I have a couple of questions that you probably may not have the direct answer to right now, but something that I think you guys need to keep or think about. The current building that's there, I believe, does not have a basement. It's just built on ground level. And you're proposing going down 2 levels down below the ground?
Actually, 3. Yep.
You said 3, right?
Yep.
So have you had any thought or any testing of what you will or possibly encounter once you get down there? The reason I'm bringing this question up is a little bit of history. The building that's across the street that used to be a hotel, when it was built, had major problems with water, groundwater. And I would anticipate that this building is probably going to have the same issue. So that's why I'm bringing that question up.
Yeah.
If you're going down 3 levels, you be prepared that you might run into some issues with the groundwater. And then my second question relates to, just for clarification, because I'm a little confused. The entrance to the residential piece where the students are going to be is going to be off of the parking lot that's adjacent to the building?
So yeah, that's accurate. So as you're aware, yeah, there is a parking lot here, which is part of the, servicing the architecture and engineering building. But there is a walkway that actually connects through a passageway to 6th Street and comes all the way down to Georgia. So, that's the condition today, and so, yeah, so students will get on that walkway and then they'll step up onto this courtyard, or they may already be down on Georgia and they can enter off of Georgia Avenue.
Yeah. There's 2 means of access, one from Georgia Avenue and one that's cloistered in the courtyard that's behind the historic building.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, Derek, maybe you can answer this question, and I'm just trying to think through some stuff here. That walkway is not a permanent, it's part of Howard's property. So what is the potential for down the road that might it be an issue relating to doing something with that parking lot and creating a building?
Well, I think that that's a major pedestrian connector. If you ever, sit and just watch during the normal academic day, a huge number of students, particularly those that live in the Howard Plaza Towers on Berry, and those that actually reside in the Trellis House as well. This is a major, corridor where students cut through. And so I think that through this project and through other, means and methods, that we really seek to memorialize and further improve the pedestrian environment in that particular corridor. And I think there are no plans at present to knock down our College of Engineering building, or the parking lot that serves it. So I think that, again, through this project, we should, greatly enhance that corridor and also improve the student experience along that corridor. So it's not as much of a, an afterthought as a pass through because of the convenience of the number of steps that it takes, but it actually becomes a place that's, more significant and memorialized. So again, it is, on one side, it's a surface parking lot, but on the other side, there'll be a beautiful, wonderful courtyard that the students will have access to.
Okay, so then my last question, and I'll get off this, Chip, is since you are changing around the design of the building, and I understand that it makes sense to me, I'm fine with that. Is there thought to, and I also understand because I walk past there all the time, how much traffic goes through there, but is there a thought to expanding the sidewalk and beautifying the sidewalk to make it more of a pedestrian way, and in the sense of maybe putting some tree things in there to make it really look like a connector between 6th Street or 4th Street, whatever that street is, and Georgia? Because right now it doesn't come straight through except for that little opening there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing this as a walkthrough, I think at this point, if you're doing the major construction, you'd want to do something to either take away some of the parking and make the sidewalk wider and put some tree boxes or seats or something, just so that it becomes really the pedestrian way that you're talking about.
Yep, I think that those are all things that we can explore. On the other side, you'll have faculty with their pitchforks and torches, not being happy about losing their parking. So we'll have to balance the outcome there. But I think that there's definitely a way that that pedestrian environment can be improved through this project, and through coordinated action. So as we get further along, I think that that's something that we'll definitely look to realize on the job here.
Thank you, Pat and Derek.
Sorry to ask to your earlier question about sidewalk. I don't believe that we are greatly increasing the depth of the sidewalk. And I think I'll let Bob speak to that more specific, or Chloe more specifically, but given where the historic facades are placed, and the fact that we're not moving them, we could technically notch back a little bit, but it would create still a disjointed and not a continuously consistent width along the sidewalk realm right there.
Well, the answer is, the historic buildings are kind of holding the original building line, but we are in fact creating more elbow room on George Avenue because we're pushing all these facades at the street level. As I mentioned earlier, you can see this is about a 3 foot deep like archway now. So the facade used to be right on the face of the building line, and now these are all actually pushed in 3 feet. So starting from this point down, there is in fact more area, if you will, on the sidewalk.
So that's all being opened up so that you can actually walk through, where right now you have to just walk on the sidewalk.
It's a series of deeper openings. It's not like the sidewalk out wider so you can walk straight down. You can't really experience the space that way. But if there's tables and chairs outside of a dining facility or one of the retail facilities, there's going to be a little additional area for tables and chairs on Georgia.
So basically, the superstructure, the brick, is right at the property line, but
Right.
there will basically be more alcoves, I think is a right term to use.
Yeah, that's a good
that
word.
step down the corridor south of the northern historic facade. So to answer your question, it's like yes and no. Will it feel more open? Yes, but will it actually be a contiguous sidewalk that's wider? No. The columns will have to stay where they are. And again, we've pushed the curtain wall facade back a little bit so that there's more alcove space so that the public realm feels larger and there's more, elbow room to maneuver. I think that greatly, will help with wheelchair navigation on this particular block because, there's some pinch points there that are a little bit outside of DDOT's standards.
Just for clarification, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the current structure right now, and it is set back, like the windows are not flush with the brick, particularly in those archways. There is some white concrete or something that's almost flush, but where people go into the actual storefront, it looks maybe about 1 to 2 feet. Are you just suggesting that you're going to bump it back more?
It's about a foot. You're right. It's going to go from 1 foot to 3 feet.
Cool. Okay. Just want to clarify.
Yep. No,
Commissioner
good point.
Jacobson.
Well, and I'm sorry, Patrick had a lot of questions. I want to make sure we answered them all. With respect to the water table, we are aware that the water table in this particular area is not the lowest it could be, but that is something that the geotechnical studies have delivered to us, and so our design and our structure and everything else is suited to that sort of an environment. Just wanted to round the bases there. And I know I'll turn it back over to Lila to.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Commissioner Jacobson if you can elevate Liati Cole with Graystar as a panelist, please.
I see her now. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
And I think Commissioner Footer, you had your hand up, but you lowered it. Did you mean to do that? Did you have a question? And then it was Tony.
Patrick had answered or asked it, and I think it's been answered, so you can move on.
All right. Tony, do you want to ask your question?
Quickly, what is the final completion date again?
So they're looking to complete construction by the summer of 2028.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And just to follow up on that, when is it expected to start?
You'll see some kind of preliminary construction, facade bracing or whatever as early as this summer, July. And then, major construction won't take place until later this year. Not October, November.
How is that going to coordinate with the site across from that, Brian? Was that ever resolved about what they're doing with that?
I was just about to ask that question. So
All
are you
right.
guys no, you're great. Thank you. We're, mind link. Are you guys coordinating with the developers across the street, which are Howard University developments, around the construction plans and mitigating any disruption and just learning from some of the issues that they've been having with DDOT about covered construction walkways, things of that nature?
Derek?
Yep. So we convene all of our development partners periodically. I'd say at minimum once a quarter, but typically monthly, to do just that, to compare best practices, to talk about staging areas, et cetera, so that we can all, have enough elbow room to get the work done without disrupting the flow of things in any major way for both the university as well as the surrounding neighborhood.
So it might be worth convening them again if you haven't done it in the past 2 months, because they've reached out to me. I've gotten involved with DDOT around some of the ridiculousness that they've asked your developers to do, and I'm totally on board with what the development team's been doing. And then after all of that transpired, I asked if the two construction sites have been communicating across each other across 8th Street, and they have not. And so I understand what you're saying, Derek, and that those are very nice words, but can you show me that? Because they're not right now.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to circle back with you specifically on that item.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to get the answer to that too, since Brian and I worked on trying to give them some concrete solutions to push back on DDOT, and I don't think anything was ever resolved that I'm aware of. And it's an issue that I think has to be really addressed. If both of these start coming up at the same time, it's going to be a mess.
Hey guys, I'll jump in here. Commissioner Footer, I have been in contact with Shinway, and we are creating something to get out to you. So it is on exactly what you're talking about. We have been in talks with coming up with some communication, some comms for you around exactly what you're talking about. Okay. Awesome. I've been on jury duty for 2 weeks. Otherwise you would have gotten that already. So
but also,
I
want to add that thank you for bringing that to our attention, because again, while we encourage and push the developers to do that, each of them also wants to preserve their own toys. So no disrespect to Greystar or anyone on, but everyone is trying to further their own agenda for their own investor base. And so again, we need to make sure to corral that so that we all are working for the common good.
And that's also part of the directive for the university and all of these development teams. I mean, Brian's not dealing with a unique situation here. And I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but this has been going on from the very first project that popped out of the box, and the lack of communication that's there. And this issue, without sounding mean here, we as residents should not have to be advocating on behalf of the university to get government agencies to do what is the right thing to do. And if the university is not going to be as transparent as it needs to be to communicate that with the people that are helping, it kind of leaves you sour twist in your mouth that you don't want to continue doing that. So, I mean, I'm glad that we're moving forward, but you've got to keep the nose to the grindstone, as they say. I'll get off my soapbox.
And Commissioner Footer?
Yeah, I don't want to distract if anyone else has any comments, but I do just want to say that I like the new design. I've always been kind of an advocate of the university. It would be lovely for the university to open up a little bit more towards Georgia Avenue. And I think this is really meeting that. So thank you for this new design. With that in mind, I am not as familiar with the old design, but did we lose any residential units with this new, I think you called it a step Z rather than the original E?
Your question, Commissioner Footer, is whether or not
Did
this
we lose
design,
residential units?
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't believe that we did.
no.
All right, awesome. Because we've been advocating and hearing from students as you guys have just how great it would be to maintain or to have students stay on campus and increase student housing. And you guys are meeting that demand with this. This is fantastic.
Yep. And I mean, to that point, to get to this point with the project, we actually surveyed the whole student body, et cetera, for market demand, price sensitivity, amenities, et cetera. So it's been a very interactive process, and I want to thank you for pointing that out.
Mm.
All right.
Did you mention how many units or state student housing units are proposed? I know that's probably changed since you redesigned it.
592 beds. So,
592
About 280
beds,
units.
not rooms.
Yeah,
right.
about 280 units and 591 beds.
And then what at this point, and I'm sure we're way ahead of the schedule here, but what is the makeup of that? Are they dorm style rooms? Are they single rooms? How are you planning to have the 500 beds?
They're apartments, actually. So there's 4-bed, 2-bath apartments. There's 2-bed, 1-bath apartments. There's 1-bed, 1-bath apartments. There's studio apartments. But they're intended to be for upperclassmen. But I don't think, Derek, you can speak to this better than I can. It's probably open to all students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, they're apartment style that have kitchens, full kitchens. And again, I think the prevalent unit type is the 4-bedroom, 2-bath and the 2-bedroom, 1-bath. That's the majority. I think there are some studios and some 1-bedrooms, but by and large, that was the housing type that was able to meet the price point and was most highly in demand. And also, those are private student rooms. They're not shared occupancy. So that's another element to it.
All right, are there any other questions or comments from the committee members?
My final comment is, as usual, will you please send this presentation around to all the committee members?
Yes, we will forward it to
Teresa.
Teresa, yes, to either Commissioner Footer or Commissioner Jacobson who can
And does
serve.
this have on it? I didn't see any of the numbers relating to the housing and what's.
No, Patrick, that is in the full set that we filed with the zoning commission. And I can just send you the link to the
That's online.
zoning
It's
commission.
online.
Yes,
Yeah, you send me the link. That's fine. Then I go and pull what I want to look at.
okay.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I do have one other question, Commissioner Jacobson. I apologize.
Yeah, go for it.
As you guys are doing this, you mentioned it's along Bryant Street. Are you guys going to do anything with the actual Bryant Street, I guess, street itself? The reason I bring it up, and I know I'm a broken record, and Commissioner Jacobson and I are both a broken record, but we love fighting for bike lanes and bringing bike lanes to our neighborhood. And Bryant Street was identified through Commissioner Jacobson's great research as a really, really great opportunity to increase dedicated bike lanes for east-west connectivity, which is severely lacking throughout the city. And with the new Bryant Street opening up with the development across the street and the great stretch that you guys have going across campus, just want to continue to bring up the idea of having bike lanes on Bryant Street.
Got it. So I will say that I don't think that was something that our development team contemplated as part of this project. And the only thing that I'll add, and thank you for pulling up this image. Bryant Street is a public street between Georgia Avenue and 6th Street. When it hits 6th Street, it actually transitions into a private roadway that the university owns and controls all the way till 5th, and then it picks back up again. So, I think there may be some added flexibility, but I wonder about DDOT and how they would view that, given that they don't necessarily control or have the ability to maintain a bike lane on private property.
No.
That's, I think, is the only potential monkey wrench, for lack of a better term, that that might present itself there. But otherwise, I don't think that this development team contemplated it, but I also don't think we necessarily would take it off the table.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to facilitate a meeting between DDOT and Howard University, because they said something similar of, they're up for it, but don't think that Howard be up for it. And that, maybe it sounds like this is a great way for the ANC to try and bring partners together to try and figure out what a comprehensive plan could be between private and public property for bike lanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think zooming out, I mean, because that naturally speaks to the whole network and not just like this project or its environment. So I think that would be a useful conversation to have, so we can figure out how that works. Because again, there are, in our master plan, it contemplates some different multimodal opportunities along 6th Street to make it more pedestrian friendly, et cetera. And that may play very well into the Bryant Street corridor. So let's set something up. We can work through Teresa to maybe get
Derek,
some books.
and I wanted to just remind you that your traffic engineer is on the call, so he
Oh.
can also.
Good stuff.
Yes, hi,
Yeah,
Derek.
Jerome Slade is on the phone.
Yes.
Fantastic. Hey, Erwin.
Related to Bryant Street, in the master plan, it was contemplated to be converted to two-way at one point. So, obviously we don't have enough real estate to be able to have two-way and bike lanes. But as part of this project, we are not converting Bryant Street to two-way. As part of the master plan, it was contemplated that that other projects down the line would be essentially tasked to converting Bryant Street to two-way, but not this project.
So let me build on what Brian has just said. I just thought of another question. Since you're building this new building with underground parking, which it's a wonderful thing, are you planning on having a bike storage and facilities underneath the building to be able to store bikes? I think that's part of some of the requirements. I'd have to look up in the code and see what it says, but
Bob can
So
speak to
Pat,
that.
I kind of missed that as I was walking around the ground level, but this gray box right here is bike storage. So as students are on that walkway that you were talking about, they can take their bike right into the bike storage. It actually sits between the two very large beams that span the basketball court. That's the space for the bikes.
And Erwin, can you just confirm we actually exceed, right, the long-term bike parking?
Yes, that's correct. Based on the zoning requirements for the university use, we do exceed the long-term bike parking, and we are maximizing as much real estate on both Georgia Avenue and Bryant Street for short-term parking where we can fit it and where it's appropriate.
Do you have an idea of how many bike spots will be available in there?
On the long-term, Pat?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have that number. Erwin, you want to look it up?
Yes, I'm pulling it up right now. Just give me a few seconds here.
And while he's looking that up, to build on again what Brian was saying, I think we need to look at the bigger picture in some of the connectivity of what's being done with some of these long-term projects, because we have the street that was put in between, let me get my numbers right, 8th and 9th Street. That's going to go behind the Recco Bond Bread building and then across the street. And then there's supposed to also be a connectivity between Bryant across behind the Whole Foods. So that's a concept that I think has to be discussed with DDOT as to whether or not there's a availability and what their thought is about the bike lanes over there, because one of those two streets should be available to have bike lanes put on, since they're both are in the Duke plan as the connectivity between the north and the south, or east and west, whatever that is.
So we are providing 109 long-term bike spaces, which are the spaces in the bike room, and then 32 short-term spaces, which are out on the out in the public space.
Okay, and those are for student use, I would assume?
So the indoor ones are for students. The outdoor ones are for the general public and anybody, both for students and anybody visiting the any of the retail establishments.
Okay, that's good. That's a huge number.
Yes, it's pretty significant.
Yeah. Does that make sense to what I'm saying, Brian? I'm trying to connect the dots here.
Yep, 100%. I agree. Yeah, you're referencing W Street, which will connect across Georgia Avenue and basically 8th Street, because the new W Street was built with the reverb, and then Bryant Street, which is to be built, which will connect Georgia, basically, I believe, to Florida or Sherman, maybe.
It's gonna go across behind the Whole Food piece has one part of it. And then between 9th and 8th is supposed to be a road, and then between 8th and Georgia, there's supposed to be
Right.
supposed to go all the way across.
Yeah.
Though I think it's a one-way from Florida to 9th, or Florida.
Yeah, but it still has the ability, because he was saying that that's a two-way street, which makes sense, that two ways of traffic makes it less for a bike lane. But when we lobbied for this whole thing originally to get that to be a one-way street, it was thinking that long-term vision was to be able to have the ability to put in a bike lane on that. So Bryant Street up top should be able to have it.
Good to know.
You just need to connect that dot with DDOT, because sometimes they don't, somebody comes and somebody goes and we lose transition.
Thank you for that, Patrick. Yeah. Commissioner Jacobson, happy to work with you in the transportation committee to start to set some of that up.
Yeah, happy to. And I think actually in our resolution for the, oh God, I can't remember what the project on the other side of Georgia is called, but I think in that resolution we had mentioned DDOT should consider bike lanes over there too. So helps connect with some of the other things that we're working on. But thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Footer. Any other questions from the committee or from attendees? And then I guess for the Howard folks, what would be best from us tonight? Are you looking for
Yes.
some sort of, oh, go ahead.
We're asking the committee to make a recommendation in support of the project to the full ANC so that we can present to the full ANC. Is it the 26th?
So you're asking for a support for concept and design?
Yes. The support of the application is really just support of the further processing application, which includes the project design, which is the project design.
Which is going to the zoning commission via the campus plan.
Yes, the further processing of the campus.
Further process. Gotcha.
Just for my own clarification, there's no amendment to the campus plan or any zoning variance or anything. It's just design and.
It's design. We do need, we are requesting relief for the outdoor plaza area. Just because there's no space on Georgia Avenue. I mean, it's just because we're maintaining that building line and the existing building facade. That would be the only area of relief. Under the regulations, we're required to, regulations require, I think it's 8% of the square footage to be maintained like as an open arcade area near the building entrance, but we compensate for that in other ways. We just, because of the building facade that we're preserving along Georgia Avenue, we're not able to meet that requirement.
And then Lila, we also need some relief for the short-term parking.
Short-term bicycle.
Short-term bike parking. Yes.
Yeah, which will make up with by exceeding the long-term bicycle parking. Thank you, Erwin.
How far off of the 8% is it?
I'd have to look that up.
Are you
Um,
asking for the short-term requirement, Brian?
no,
No,
he's talking about the plaza requirement, right? Bob, do you have that number readily available? Otherwise, we can look it up. It won't take long. Or Chris, if you can look it up. Yes.
Brian, just so you know, usually the zoning commission doesn't take into consideration anything less than 10%. If it's over 10%, then they'll question it and hammer them. But since this is less than 10%, they still need to mention it that we're supporting that, but that they tend to not have real issues with that.
Bob or Chris, are you able to look up that number for the plaza requirement?
So the requirement's 8%. Hi, Chris Cohen for the record. The requirement's 8%, but we're gonna have to get back to you on what we're providing. And the requirement, the 8% requirement derives from the MU10 zoning.
Well, right, but what is the request in our application? We've requested a waiver or relief.
It's a special exception. The further processing application is being processed as special exception.
Right, but-
I don't have a number
Okay,
for what the deviation would be.
okay. We'll get that back to you in short order.
So the two things that you're asking for is a special exception from,
Well, the special further processing is a special exception itself, and then we will need relief from the bicycle parking and the waiver of the plaza requirement. And so none of those are area variances, they're all special exception.
And you're making up for it's a waiver from the short term, and you're making up for it
Short-term
in long
only.
term.
Correct.
That zoning hearing is what date again?
May 5th.
Okay.
so if nobody has any further questions or comments, I would like to move that the committee recommend to the full ANC that it supports the furtherance of the project in the campus plan for, I don't know what this is called now, right off the top of my head. What did you say that was?
It's the
Item J?
fusion. Huh?
Item J?
Oh, it's called the Fusion Building under the
Okay.
campus plan.
So I'll say the Fusion Building for a special exception for the plaza and the bike requirement.
Second.
All right, and since we still have a lot of the Howard folks on here, maybe we'll just, everyone that's on the committee, raise your hand. If you're in favor, I'm trying to raise my hand. And raise your hand if you're in opposition. And any abstentions? Looks like it was unanimous. So thank you so much for the Howard folks for joining tonight. Really appreciate your continued partnership throughout ANC 1E, and looking forward to continue to working with you on this and other projects.
Thank you so
Right,
much.
thank you so
And
much.
Thank you all.
Patrick, I will send you the link to the case file and we'll try to get you more information on that plaza requirement. But I'll
Thank
email you.
Yep.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
Just one comment that I look forward to setting up the meeting to discuss the broader transportation piece, and just want to highlight that we have a fairly new transportation director, Michael Mason, who comes to us from Louisiana State University. So he's about 2 weeks, 3 weeks in. So I really would love to get him and hit the ground running with the group. So looking forward to scheduling that.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good night.
Good night.
Ciao.
Brian, I don't know whether you want me to be involved in that since I'm not technically a member of the transportation committee, but if you want me to sit in on those discussions, and I'm available. No strings attached. You don't have to if you don't want to. I'm just offering that.
No, I'd love that because it sounds like you also have some historical knowledge of some conversations about Bryant Street being intended for a bike lane and the history of it being a one-way, all that. So yeah, thank you for offering. I'd love to take you up on that.
Yeah, I'd love to work with you on that too, Pat. And then I think next item on the agenda, I believe, Alex, you wanted to talk about the comp plan.
Yeah.
Or introduce.
I just
Yeah.
really just introducing.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm Alex, for those of you who don't know me. I live in Parkview. Josh, Brian, and Michael have graciously invited me to be on the committee. My day job is as the DC policy director at Greater Washington. I bring that up only to say that I'm representing myself as a resident. My views are my own. They do overlap with my organization from time to time, but I am my own person and I'm here as a 1E resident and constituent, not for my job. That said, I did just want to mention that Office of Planning is likely to start outreach soon for its rewrite of the comprehensive plan. ANC commissioners, Josh and Brian, you can speak a little bit more to this, received an invite from Office of Planning to initially brief ANCs and ANCs only on the 27th. This is in line with how Office of Planning has handled stuff with the comp plan in the past, so I'm not super surprised. The comp plan is DC's foundational land use document. I suspect everybody on this call is fairly familiar with the comp plan versus zoning and how those cannot be inconsistent with each other. And I only just wanted to flag this to say that it seems like OP is getting started soon. I don't think we need to do anything as a committee, just keep it on our radar. There's probably going to be more to talk about next month. And, maybe we can get a download from the commissioners when they've heard from OP and have a better sense of how that might affect the committees and the commission.
Alex, my understanding is that they've already had some meetings with ANC commissioners on this, because I was briefed by one of the 1B commissioners that he attended a meeting, and they're starting to get involved in, I'm trying to think of the right word to use, turn up their thought patterns on what they want to do with this too.
I was going to say, I think you're probably referring to upzoning, or I don't remember the exact right term. I'm sorry. But changing some of the rules around, I think it was R1A zones. There was an email that went out to ANCs about a month ago for that, but I haven't seen any other comprehensive plan invites.
Maybe that's what he was talking about, because he did ask me to look into some of that as it relates to that. I'm going to have the presentation that they made, but maybe he was getting confused on what they're, and maybe they talked about that a little bit in that meeting, that they're going to start doing meetings.
Was that, I'm so Patrick, if you don't want to say, you don't have to, but was that in this term or was that in the last term? Because I believe I may be familiar with some of the conversation you might be talking.
No, that was this just
this back.
Yeah,
okay,
recently.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I was asked to give them some input on it, and then they sent me the whole slide deck that was talking about the
Gotcha.
RF1, or not RF1, whatever it is, the zoning. It's basically just changing, but those zones are not all around the city. They're only in certain parts of the city, and Ward 1 doesn't have any of that at all. Actually, most of them are up in Ward 4 and 5.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's apartment dwellings that are. And
yeah, that wasn't comp plan related. That was just related to that one zone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if the comp plan came up on that call, but that was something separate from what OP was presenting at the time. So there's nothing really to do there. I just wanted to, it's relevant to the committee. Just wanted to say that it's probably happening. And I look forward to learning more from the Office of Planning about how we can participate.
Alex, have you just to pick your brain, since you're new to this, but have you actually seen what the comp plan is?
Oh, have I seen?
I'm sure in your job you probably do.
Good question.
It's a monstrous document that just goes on and on and on and on. But
there's 2 copies of it in my house. I am better versed with it than I would like to be. I'm hoping that it will be shorter. That is going to be one of my main asks in my job and also as a resident. Yeah, I participated pretty extensively in the amendments process, and have been sort of tracking how OP has chosen to implement parts of it and where they have done that. So, I think relevant to 1E, we have probably some, I'm gonna say leverage, but some room with the amendments to maybe talk a little bit about Lower Georgia Avenue, which will be a good conversation for next month. Since there were some changes made in the future land use map and the amendment process, enabling a little bit more density. I mean, Pat, you may have insight on this as well, but I doubt we're gonna get a rewritten comprehensive plan any earlier than 2028. So we'll be working off of the existing one for quite some time. So
Yeah,
I
I mean, it,
balance like what some of the asks are versus what is possible under the current plan.
it behooves us to follow along, and I've attended those meetings in previous comp plan reiterations. OP does a pretty tertiary oversight of what's in there, and it really is up to people that want to really dive into it to understand what it is, but and you know, having a look at what pertains to us, which is, I believe, is the mid-city section of the comp plan that we really want to look in. It might be advantageous for us to get the latest, greatest version that's out there. I don't know if I have the updated version or not, because it's a big, huge book, and you already know that. But and maybe have it send in a file so that everybody can look at it and start reading through it and understand, so that we can put comments in if we want as a commission, specifically in relations to that. I know that there's been some changes that the council person has put in to change certain areas for more density. But yeah, all of the stuff with Lower Georgia Avenue is changing that around, and it's the latest change to that Howard put in has some potential down the road issues that will arise when that gets put into place. So
yeah, and Alex, thank you for mentioning the 27th. I have not seen that email, but I'll go back and specifically look for it. And to your point, maybe in March we can come prepared with some information to share that has come out of that meeting. I'm sure you guys will probably hear about it shortly thereafter, but maybe we can actually talk through some of it during the March meeting.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing what they tell you.
Yeah.
That's really it. That I just figured we should mention it at this moment in time.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I didn't mean to make it seem like there was a big presentation from you.
No, I'll come with a presentation in March for no reason.
And I think Commissioner Footer, you had one last thing.
Yeah, so this committee heard from Councilmember Nadeau's office, specifically David Meny, in January. Yeah, in January, around the Neighborhood Management Authority Act of 2025. At the time, they were coming to actually just seek some input and general awareness, but it hadn't been introduced yet. So now it has formally been introduced, and ANC 1A, 1B, and 1E is coordinating together in order to just get some community feedback, because it's specifically it's impacting Columbia Heights and U Street Corridor, and all 3 of our ANCs are directly impacted. And so what I would like to just ask is, 1, put it on everyone's radar if you're not familiar already. And then 2, ask, in March, we would really like to have a more formal conversation about what are some of the things that we want to support, some of the things we may want to suggest, and then put some sort of resolution together for consideration in the ANC's March meeting. And so if people have not had a chance to take a look at the legislation, I will forward the details, but it is public now. It's in what is it, LIMS? It's online and available to everybody. And just want to put that on everybody's radar.
Thank you, Commissioner Footer. Any other questions or comments? All right, I've waited the 10 seconds I'm told to always wait. I'll go ahead and make a motion with unanimous consent that we adjourn the ZED committee meeting for February. The next one will be in March, and it is 8:19 p.m. Is there any dissent? All right, thanks everyone for your participation tonight. Looking forward to continue to working with you all. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks all. Bye.